In 69 AD, Emperor Vitellius didn't just hide, he pulled a dog's mattress over his head. Rome's divine ruler, sweating in the chill, heard soldiers' boots approaching. This was not order. This was the collapse. A global empire was devouring itself. 4 emperors seized Rome's throne in a single year. Each one died violently. How does the pinnacle of civilization devolve into such brutal chaos? And what does it say about the systems you trust that this ancient pattern still appears today? To understand the chaos, you first need to understand the silence that came before it. In June of 68 AD, the Emperor Nero, the last of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, took his own life. For over a century, power in Rome had been a family affair, a direct line of succession, however twisted, from the divine Augustus himself. But with Nero's final pathetic gasp, that line was severed forever. The throne was empty. The silence that fell over the city was not one of peace, but of profound, terrifying uncertainty. For the first time in 100 years, there was no heir, no designated successor, no plan. You must picture Rome not as the pristine marble ruins you see today, but as a sprawling, volatile metropolis of 1 million people, a city that smelled of wood smoke, foreign spices, and overflowing sewers. It was a city powered by a fragile illusion, the belief that one man, the emperor, stood between order and annihilation. When that man was gone, the illusion shattered. From the frontiers, the legions, the true source of Roman power began to stir. On the Spanish frontier, an old, stern governor named Servius Sulpicius Galba heard the news. He was 71 years old, a man of old-fashioned discipline and even older money, and he saw not a crisis, but an opportunity. With the backing of his legions, he marched toward Rome not as a rebel, but as a restorer of order. The Senate, desperate for a firm hand, quickly legitimized his claim. Galba became the first man to become emperor without any connection to the founding dynasty. He had proven that the secret was out. An emperor could be made somewhere other than Rome. It was a lesson the rest of the world was learning with terrifying speed. Galba entered the city in the autumn of 68 AD, a grim, unsmiling figure who promised stability. What he delivered was something else entirely. And what came next was a lesson in how quickly power can corrupt. But his biggest mistake wasn't even about power. And this is where the story stops making sense. The dread began to creep back into the city almost immediately. Galba was a creature of the old republic, a man who believed in austerity and discipline, but he fundamentally misunderstood the Rome he now ruled. His first and most fatal mistake was one of pure arrogance. The Praetorian Guard, the elite soldiers who served as the emperor's personal protectors, had been promised a substantial bonus, a donative, for their support. It was a standard, expected part of any new succession, but Galba refused to pay it, declaring with cold disdain, "I am accustomed to levy soldiers, not to buy them." If you had been a soldier in those barracks, a man who had risked his life on a promise, you would have felt the chill of that statement in your bones. It was not the statement of a leader. It was the statement of a master who believed his servants owed him their loyalty for free. The city's mood soured. Galba executed political opponents without trial. He was seen as miserly, cruel, and completely out of touch with the populace. Meanwhile, another man was watching this unfold with keen interest. His name was Marcus Salvius Otho. He was a former friend of Nero, a man known for his charm, his ambition, and his monumental debts. Otho had supported Galba's rise, hoping to be named his heir. But in January of 69 AD, Galba made another disastrous choice. He formally adopted a young, respectable nobleman named Piso Licinianus, a man with no military experience and even less charisma. For Otho, this was a death sentence, both politically and financially. His creditors were closing in, and he reportedly remarked that it was no more dangerous to fall to a public enemy than to a private creditor. That night, Otho began meeting with his contacts inside the Praetorian Guard. He didn't offer them principles or promises of a restored republic. He offered them cold, hard cash, promising the money that Galba had denied them. What nobody realized yet, not even the people involved, was that this had already been decided. While Otho plotted in the dark alleys of Rome, a far greater storm was gathering on the Rhine frontier. The powerful legions stationed in Germania, unimpressed with the distant and stingy Galba, had decided to choose their own emperor. On January 2nd, 69 AD, they swore their allegiance to their commander, a gluttonous and affable general named Aulus Vitellius. The news of this rebellion began its slow journey toward Rome, carried by horse and ship. A death warrant for Galba that he did not yet know had been signed. Rome was now trapped between two converging threats: a conspiracy festering within the city walls and a massive army marching down from the north. Every day, the tension in the Forum grew thicker. You would have seen senators whispering in shadowed porticos, their eyes darting nervously. You would have heard the market traders fall silent when a Praetorian patrol marched past. The air itself felt heavy, charged with the knowledge that something was about to break. But the real reason nobody stopped it is stranger than anything that came before. Galba, old and oblivious, continued his daily routines, blind to the daggers being sharpened all around him. The city was holding its breath, and the worst part hadn't happened yet. The true horror of the situation was about to be revealed. Here's where it gets worse. The morning of January 15th, 69 AD dawned cold and foggy. Galba was at the imperial palace, making a sacrifice to the gods. The historian Tacitus tells us the omens were terrible. The entrails of the sacrificial animal were dark and threatening, a sign of domestic treason and imminent danger. At that very moment, Otho slipped away from the ceremony, telling the emperor he was going to inspect a property he was thinking of buying. Instead, he went directly to the Praetorian camp, where he was met with a roar of approval. The soldiers lifted him onto their shoulders and declared him emperor. The conspiracy was now in the open. A terrified messenger burst into the palace, bringing the news to Galba. The old emperor was paralyzed by indecision. His advisors argued, should they barricade the palace or confront the mutineers? Galba chose the latter. He was placed in a litter and carried out into the Roman Forum, a frail old man hoping his presence alone would quell the rebellion. If you can, imagine the person you trust most in this world, someone whose career you have made, whose life you have saved. Now imagine them watching as the mob closes in, their face a mask of indifference. That is what Galba saw. The Forum, the heart of Roman life, became a scene of abject chaos. The people scattered. Galba's own guards deserted him. The litter was overturned, spilling the 71-year-old emperor onto the cold, unforgiving flagstones. A soldier from the 15th Legion was the first to reach him. Galba, in his final moments, is said to have bared his neck and said, "Strike if it be for the good of the Roman people." They did. He was stabbed again and again, his head severed from his body and paraded through the streets on a spear. His chosen heir, Piso, was cut down nearby, slaughtered on the steps of the Temple of Vesta. The betrayal was absolute. A public and brutal execution of a reigning emperor in the very center of his own city. The second emperor of the year was dead, but the true significance of this moment, the pattern it revealed, was still hidden. But there's a detail buried in the record that nobody flagged at the time. The immediate horror of Galba's murder blinded Rome to a far more terrifying truth. This wasn't just a simple coup, a singular act of betrayal by a greedy Praetorian guard. What was unfolding was the terrifying logic of a system that had completely failed. This was not chaos, it was a pattern. Otho, now emperor, had barely seated himself on the throne when the news he had been dreading finally arrived. Vitellius and the legions of Germany were not just rebelling, they were marching on Italy. The coup in Rome had been a desperate, preemptive strike, but it hadn't changed the larger equation. Two massive Roman armies were now set on a collision course, and the prize was the empire itself. And here's what should make you deeply uncomfortable. This wasn't unusual. The civil wars that had ended the Republic a century earlier were repeating themselves, but this time the conflict was faster, more brutal, and stripped of all ideological pretense. There were no grand speeches about liberty or tyranny. There was only a raw, naked contest for supreme power. In April, the two forces met near the town of Bedriacum in northern Italy. Tens of thousands of Roman soldiers, men who had trained together, fought barbarians together, and shared the same eagle standards, now prepared to slaughter one another. The first battle of Bedriacum was a bloodbath. It lasted all day and into the night, with an estimated 40,000 Roman casualties. Otho's forces were shattered. When Otho received the news of the defeat, he made a decision that shocked everyone. Rather than flee or continue the fight, he chose to commit suicide, stating he would rather die than be the cause of any more civil war. He had ruled for just 95 days. Vitellius was now the undisputed master of Italy. His army marched on Rome, not as liberators, but as a conquering horde, looting and carousing their way through the countryside. The system was now clear. The Senate was irrelevant. The people were powerless spectators. The only thing that mattered was the loyalty of the legions. And the legions had just learned that they, and they alone, could create, anoint, and destroy emperors at will. But none of that prepared anyone for the man who was quietly watching all of this from the other side of the world. There is one more person in this story. His name was Titus Flavius Vespasianus, and he held the key to Rome's survival, or its complete destruction, by controlling something far more fundamental than armies. The secret Vespasian held was not a weapon, but a commodity: grain. While the civil war raged in Italy, Vespasian was in the province of Judea, commanding a massive, battle-hardened army putting down a revolt. He was a commoner by birth, a pragmatic and experienced soldier, the very opposite of the decadent aristocrats who had been fighting over the throne. Crucially, his command in the east gave him influence over the neighboring province of Egypt. What you now understand, and what most people never will, is that this wasn't about who had the biggest army. It was about who controlled the food. Egypt was the breadbasket of Rome, the source of the grain that fed the city's massive population. In July of 69 AD, the prefect of Egypt, Tiberius Julius Alexander, a key ally, declared for Vespasian. With a single stroke, Vespasian had seized control of Rome's grain supply. He could starve the city into submission without fighting a single battle. That same month, his own legions in Judea proclaimed him emperor. The fourth emperor of the year had entered the game. While Vespasian consolidated his power in the east, his loyal general, Antonius Primus, did not wait. Primus led a vanguard of Danubian legions and stormed into Italy, racing toward Rome with a savage ferocity. He defeated Vitellius's forces at the Second Battle of Bedriacum, a fight even more brutal than the first. The Vitellian forces broke and fled back to Rome, with Primus in hot pursuit. What followed was the ultimate horror, a battle for the city of Rome itself. This was not a war on a distant frontier against a foreign enemy. This was Roman legionary fighting Roman legionary, street by street, house by house, in the capital of the world. The fighting surged through the Campus Martius and approached the Capitoline Hill, the sacred religious heart of the city. In the chaos, the ancient temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, the most important religious site in the entire empire, caught fire and burned to the ground. You must see this not just as the destruction of a building, but as the immolation of an idea. The gods themselves seemed to be abandoning a city that had gone mad. Meanwhile, Vitellius, the third emperor, was dragged from his pathetic hiding place in the doorkeeper's lodge. He was hauled out, his hands tied behind his back, a rope around his neck. The mob screamed insults, pelting him with filth. They tied a sword under his chin to keep his head up, forcing him to watch the destruction of his own statues. He was dragged to the Gemonian stairs, the stairs of mourning, a place reserved for the public display of executed criminals. There, he was slowly tortured to death, cut to pieces by 1,000 small wounds. His last words, as a tribune insulted him, were reportedly, "And yet I was your emperor." His body was then dragged by a hook and thrown into the Tiber River. The systemic truth was now laid bare for all to see. The Augustan Principate, the carefully constructed illusion of a restored republic led by a first citizen, was dead and buried. The emperor was no longer a magistrate. He was a military dictator, a warlord whose claim rested on nothing more than his ability to kill his rivals. This was the new constitution of the Roman Empire, written in blood on the streets of its own capital. The answer to the question you've been sitting with this entire video is this: Rome didn't fall apart because of one bad emperor, or even 4. It fell apart because the system that was supposed to choose the emperor was a lie. The Julio-Claudian dynasty had provided a century of stability, not because it was just or effective, but because it was the only rule anyone knew. Its end didn't just create a power vacuum. It revealed that the emperor's throne was never truly sacred. It was just the highest point in the landscape, a position to be taken by the man strong enough to climb a mountain of bodies. The chaos of 69 AD wasn't an aberration. It was a reversion to the mean. It was the brutal iron logic of power reasserting itself once the customs and traditions that held it in check had been burned away. The deep, unsettling truth is that civilization's rules are a fragile consensus. When that consensus breaks, the only thing that remains is the law of the jungle, where strength is the only virtue and survival is the only goal. You recognize this logic because it is woven into the very fabric of human competition. It is the logic that says results matter more than methods, that the winner writes the history, that to the victor go the spoils. In 69 AD, Rome simply stopped pretending otherwise. This wasn't a failure of politics, it was a failure of imagination. No one could imagine a way to transfer power that didn't involve violence, because for the first time, violence was the most effective and direct path. Think back to that doorkeeper's lodge. The Emperor of Rome, a man who just months before had commanded the world, reduced to hiding under a dirty mattress. That is the ultimate fate of a power built on nothing but force. The moment the force fails, there is nothing left. The system you live in today, with its peaceful transfers of power, its laws, its institutions, that system is not the default state of humanity. It is an artificial construction, a story we have to agree to tell each other every single day. In 69 AD, Romans stopped telling that story, and the world they had built came crashing down. The next time you see a political system under strain, or witness a corporate struggle for control where the rules are bent to the breaking point, remember what you just heard. You are watching the same forces at play. The line between a stable society and a war of all against all is thinner than you could ever imagine. Tell me in the comments which part of this stayed with you.